Awesome. Well, I'm here with the myth, the legend, the man himself, Jacco, to talk about sales in, I don't know, I don't know if I want to say at the end of 2024, 2025, or the AI age or whatever, but in today's world. Jacco, I'd love to, you've been in this game for a long time. Have seen a lot of changes, trends, hype cycles, technology changes, market changes, right? You've seen quite a bit. And I'm always interested in sort of the things that aren't changing, that you still hold on to, that are the rock hard principles that you teach and that you share and that you practice. And then the areas where, you're like, well, this is changing. I have to learn, I have to relearn, we have to adapt and change here. And we're probably going to start with the things that you are seeing truly change in the space and that you are curious about changing and learning more. And then we'll work our way back to the things that you still hold on to as like things that worked 10 years ago, probably will work 20 years from now. And people should keep doubling down and investing in. So I'll start with this big question, right? What's been something you've changed your mind about when it comes to sales or selling, or something that you've weren't that interested in and you've gotten way more interested in the last year or two, when it comes to like selling today and obviously using technology and all the changes in technology to help sales teams set up for success?
Steli, thank you for having me, and welcome everybody. It's a pleasure and a treat to do this, and particularly with Steli, since both of us have been in this for a while. So it's like dancing together. It's like like sparring with a person who knows and can talk about the topic. It's easy enough for me to say AI, right? That's a shot for open goal, and I'm hesitant to say that because in the end, AI is a major change. But there's fundamentally something different with AI that is important. It's not another tool. What we need to see, and what I'm intrigued by, is, and I'll point this out. We all remember perhaps the day that SalesLoft and Outreach came out. First SalesLoft, and like a year and a half later Outreach, right? And they duked it out against each other, right? And then the industry as a whole, progressed. Like many would say, not necessarily in the right direction with spam messages, but you look at from the relevance-based, more relevance-based outreach, that definitely was the case, right? So we became more relevant. And obviously later on that was put on steroids and caused all kinds of issues. But there were two parties duking it out. Now, and that was in a very specific segment, the SDR segment, on a very specific tool, email writing. Now, what is different that we today experience with AI is that imagine that SalesLoft and Outreach are replaced by the likes of OpenAI with ChatGPT and Google, right? And both of them are not just getting like a $50 million round of funding and a $200 million valuation. No, both are pouring in $50 billion of funding. Two companies competing, of which not only the segment of SDRs and email outreach is benefiting, but the entire customer, well, the entire world, but in our world that we live in, Steli, the entire customer journey is benefiting. All roles simultaneously at the same time, fueled by $150 billion at an accelerated rate that none of us really can fully comprehend at the speed that it is going with. We have a hard time, right? And to give you an idea, what is that speed? We're currently like the rule of Moore, or but more said, and I don't want to call it the law because it isn't the law, but more historically law, like about silicon and the capacity of it. We are currently seeing that AI is estimated to quadruple in performance every year for the next decade. If you do 4 to the power of 10, that means it's going to get 1 million times better over the next decade. We can't comprehend. None of us can comprehend what that is. Like there's not a person capable enough to understand what 1 million times better than today would even look like, right? And that is happening in the next decade, and it has already started. It started like 2 years ago. It is accelerating, and it is absolutely unstoppable. And the challenge I have for listeners to what you and I are talking about is that unfortunately, most human beings and executives are not taking action at an accelerated pace that this demands. The demand that the changes that are taking place and the speed they are changing with, it is at a snail's pace And it is currently deemed that most executives taking no action carries a lower risk than taking action. And that is going to change, I believe, in the next 3 to 6 months. I've been there when it happened late 2006, 7 in the media and entertainment industry, when people overlooked Netflix. And I knew what happened to all the executives, that what they thought about digital media a few years later, right? That all that I was there when that happened and lived to tell, so to speak. But yeah, that's it, Steli. Where do you go from there?
Yeah. Where do you go from there? Well, let's talk a little bit about this, right? So I think most people, I get the sense, you know, there have been some trends. What's one? Well, here's a good one. I think when social media became really popular, a lot of SaaS, business to business, enterprise, the enterprise world, the B2B world, the software world was like, oh, this is a big trend. This is going to be huge. This is where all people spend all their time. So business is going to go there, obviously, as well. And so our software now has to be our software plus social or something, right? Like it's going to have like some social feed of your customers in there or some social features, and it's going to change everything. And obviously, both things were true. On the one hand, like social media did change everything, right? It did continue to be everywhere and did disrupt all these things. But the products that sort of try to be product plus, you know, business product plus some share on social button, you know, at the top right of the UI, that didn't really turn transformative. That didn't really change anything. A lot of that software didn't really fully embed itself in the workflow of like what happened on social media. And there've been probably many other trends like that. Maybe the crypto and NFT little boost was like something where a lot of people thought about like how to build the thing on the blockchain or how to think about NFTs in a more sort of business context. With AI at this point, I don't hear anybody going, this is hype or this is not really gonna affect things. I think people are pretty sold on AI being like here and already incredible and will be so much more powerful and incredible that's very hard to comprehend. I think that piece is the piece that is then tilting brains, right? Like you go, I don't know what that means. I'm not quite sure anybody knows what that means. And so what do we do when we have no idea where things are going? It's sort of like we freeze, right? And we go, well, I don't know, let's wait a little longer, right?
So what is helpful is to realize is to push this or to look at the limited field of view that you and I have. And let's assume that that is startup scale-up land. Any company from $1 million to pick $1 billion or something, right? That is our view. And so we have to think in that context. In that context, a number of things have happened that are driving us to this point and are causing this acceleration and that tell us to be aware. So first thing that has happened is like in that 1 to 10 billion range, we are dependent on exponential growth. We can't go and say like, oh, we're going to grow 1.1x or 1.2x, or we can't grow by 5% or 10%. We got to grow 20, 30, 40%. And in the earlier stages, 200, 100, right? And so on and so forth. So we're growing. Now so that's number one, our market grows. And what we can say is that in 2025, doesn't matter what people think their investors say or what their companies want or stuff like. Folks, 2025 growth is back on the agenda and it's the number one item. And you can't get away and say it's like, oh, well, 2021 was a bad year that spilled over in 2022. And it's not like, folks, that's 3 years now, okay? 2025 is all about growth and people are going to be tasked to growth. That growth, historically, if we go back 5 to 10 years, where did it come from? Now think of growth as an output. It generates an output, and that output is revenue growth. What generates that input? That input comes from two factors, product and go-to-market, right? Have the right product. Companies that on the low end create product market-led growth. Middle end and high end, like SDR AEs and deep enterprise rep, like we'll use a go-to-market fit, go-to-market motion. Historically, what we did, Steli, in that is we hired people to grow the human-led growth motions. And in 2012, 13, 14, 15, 16, that meant SDRs and AEs and CSMs. Those were like CSMs to a lesser extent, but SDRs and AEs, volume hiring. Now, human beings create linear growth. If you hire twice as many people, Steli, you're not going to get twice as much. You're going to get 1.8, but you're not going to get 4. You're not going to get 16. You're going to get some set of 2, right? 1.8, 1.9. dependent on your onboarding and training. That means it's a linear resource that generates linear growth. But we need exponential growth. We need that rapid growth. So how do we get that? We hire exponentially more people. So if you think about it, like over the past years, and the reason why Salesforce was building that tower that stands that above San Francisco is because they were thinking every floor was going to be filled with SDRs and AEs and CSMs and whatnot, right? But these floors are empty right now. There is no SDRs because that costs money. Hiring people is extremely expensive, and exponentially hiring people is has caused the reason. I just saw Clary. I looked up their rounds of funding because of a thing that we're working with them, and I noticed that they got 150 and 225 million dollars in funding. That's a lot of funding in 2021 and 20. That's like Oracle-like funding, right? And so you come to think of that. So we use that funding to hire those people in an exponential format. So we ramp up the resources exponentially to create growth. That is the problem we're currently running. Because number one, growth is still needed. Number two, I am not going to give you the money any longer to create the exponential hiring. Because if you show up today and you say, I got $20 million and I'm going to hire a 20-person sales team, somebody on the board will say, time out. Why are we hiring? But why are we doing this? That's the reason why AI in our world is going to be big. Growth is needed, but you're not going to get the normal financial resources to fill those with positions that you need to hire exponentially and grow the team.
Do you think the first part to be affected the most is going to be the SDR, which is sort of what most people speculate in this space is, okay, SDR, especially email, kind of more automated functions that, that's the first part that an AI agent or AI could take over versus the qualifying call or the prospect of the negotiation at the end maybe comes later. How do you think about this?
Okay. AI will do three things very well for us. Like number one thing, the first thing, they will do things at higher volume. It will work 24/7 as long as you keep filling the meter, right? Like the tokens, you keep throwing the tokens, the meter keeps running, right? So that will work. Volume, 24/7, high volume, can scale capacity as long as like I said, you fill the meter. Number two, it does so at a lower cost, right? I anticipate it's going to end up within 12 to 24 months, about 1/50th of the cost, right? Based on the token price, volume, what we need, stuff like that, 1/50th of the price. So high volume, lower cost, right? And then number three, it does things at a higher quality. Now, when you think about replacing the SDR, it does two of those three things. Which are those two?
The volume and the price. Yeah,
that's right. And it doesn't do the quality.
Yeah.
As a result, what we're seeing today is that is the point. Now, let me, so now you see is, okay, we're not focusing on quality. Here comes the bottleneck that we currently are working. We know that the growth at all cost processes were broken, which were based on mass outbound, cold outbound, any form of cold outbound through any modality that you could find and any channel that you could find, right? Video via email or, like memes on social, whatever it is, right? Like all these modalities, and we're attacking all these people with it. And today, Steli, if you would open up, if you were hiring, if I open up a rec right now, right, and I would put on my LinkedIn that we're hiring a sales position, for the next 2 to 3 days, I will not be able to be productive on any one of my communication media because I will be overwhelmed with people who who want to apply for the job, and some very good friends, right, like that demand or have earned a proper response, right? So like this is wrong. So what we're currently doing with AI is we're using the old processes and primarily optimizing that to create a higher volume at a lower cost. Now, here's the trick that many don't tell you yet, or here's an unknown thing that many is not being told to the listeners. The current experience of AI is not necessarily better, but what it is doing, it creates a better output because it can chew through a lot more volume. It's more consistent in it, where previously the SDR would not follow up diligently. But, like, it's not like it generates more quality leads or anything. It's not like it's generating, all it's doing is doing higher volume more diligently. And as a result, the conversion rate improves, but not necessarily the quality of the output, right? Keep that in mind. Where we are going in the future is a world where we shouldn't be looking like, and I'll remember this, right? Like, I'm going to draw the analogy of an Uber, a ChatGPT, of all those companies. An Uber wasn't invented by the taxi industry, and hoteling industry didn't come up with Airbnb. The media industry didn't come up with Netflix. Actually, I was part of that. They were violently against it. As part of they went to Blu-ray instead of digital, right? Which cost them the market. But none of the people inside the industry generally forms a disruption that takes care of that industry. Which, by the way, side note, we could argue if Salesforce comes out of sales agent, whether that is the right solution, because that's a company from within the industry trying to disrupt itself, which, like I said, historically has proven not to work. What we are running into right now, Steli, is the understanding is what will be a proper experience? How do we redefine an Uber without making it a taxi and painting it black and like, right? That's not an Uber. We are looking for a new buying experience. Customers are going to change the way they buy. And here, I said, number one challenge is, hey, we have we have this funding that we can no longer fund SDRs and AE. Number two, we need growth, right? And number three, Steli, as buyers, they do not like the current buying experience. This is not like a secret or anything. That buyers are renowned for saying this experience that we're currently having, the cold outreach, the discovery calls. Did you know? Well, you may know this better than most, but on average, out of every discovery call, 5 to 7 questions remain unanswered during a 30-minute discovery call. Like this, and then this is like, if you have a great experience, right? Like, now, that concept has itself a root, a causality that comes from somewhere. But before I go there, I'll stop here and let you, like ping, or what are you thinking about all this, Steli? What do you see happening here?
Yeah, I think one thing that I see is that there are people that are willing to jump in, use, experiment, think, debate, try. And then there are people that are frozen and want to wait to see how things pan out. And then there are the ones that are players. And maybe there's one more group that is like late to be players, but they need to pretend that they're players, right? So if you're not able to, invest at least, I don't know what it like 200 billion, if you're not ready to move billions into this, but you have raised some money and investors are pressuring you to do something AI related, you'll take, maybe 50 million or 10 million or 20, and you'll do something, right? To appease, marketing website, to appease investors. But, this is a pointless exercise. Like, you're not going to be really building a large model of your own. So I see a lot of like either pretending to be able to play while wasting time. I see a lot of not doing anything or just the slightest thing, where it's like just the tiniest little bit. So you say that you are totally out of the market. But the people that I think will succeed are the ones that are sort of jumping in to play, not necessarily to execute a perfect strategy yet, but just to like test, learn, experience, try, fail, but move with the market and adapt with it versus wait it out or come late to it, but try to sort of imagine some version where they're going to be at the top. Like, to me, Salesforce's play in AI is very much sort of like a delusion, right? Everybody there probably knows this won't work, but they have to pretend all together that they can do something significant there. I might be wrong, right? But this is just speculation. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is really the as you said, there's the people that ruthlessly will want to use this for efficiency and scale, but all it does is degrade the experience, right? And all it does is, this is already what we've experienced, because people send more emails, there's more email outreach, more people respond less to emails in email outreach, right? Now, go ahead.
Yeah, now to tap in there.
Yeah.
What that experience is, so we are fundamentally not understanding what the new world is like. And so we keep going at the old world, the old way, not knowing and so what has changed, right? Like what is, Well, and you said it during the intro, I'm often looking at what I call first principles. Like, what are the first principles that changed, right? And oh, by the way, Steli, we got more coming, right? If we think AI is like, look, the whole idea of software as a service versus service as a software is on the horizon, and it is approaching at an equal speed, right? Like with usage-based consumption fees, and rather than annual upfront, like this is all in the next 2 to 3 years. This ball of like chaos is coming upon us, and it will distort it. Many executives will be incapable of dealing with it because it's too many changes, and they have no fundamental concept of what the business is like. If you don't have like theoretical understanding of how business in SaaS is generated, you're being played like a ball in a pinball, in the old pinball machine, right? You have no idea where the hits are going to come from. But often they can be explained by understanding the fundamental nature of what is happening. Do you mind? Is it okay if I explain that briefly?
Please, yes.
Okay. So what we're dealing with is, historically, the role of a salesperson is to bridge the asymmetry in knowledge. Meaning, if I'm going back in the 1980s and 1990s, I started selling late 1980s, early 1990s. And, like on behalf of Philips Electronics, deep enterprise-based gear. So you get to knock on doors, but that is like big corporations, right? And when you do that, you bring with you a knowledge of your R&D department. Philips was known for that, right? You bring with you knowledge of the market because you speak to multiple parties. And so when you sit in front of the buyer, understand that buyer clocks in every morning at 9, literally clicks the ticket and clocks out at 5. That buyer is not traveling to trade shows, is not traveling around the world and doing all these cool things. There is no LinkedIn. Google barely doesn't even exist in those days. So there is a discrepancy, an asymmetry of knowledge. My knowledge is this high. My buyer's knowledge is this low. As a result, when a buyer buys, there is a demand for trust. The trust is, you're the more knowledgeable person. I trust that you decide on my behalf because I don't have the insight. But today, as my wife and I recently experienced, when she was stung by 3 wasp things, she goes to the doctor the next day, and she has already researched ChatGPT the heck out of what she has, and the doctor can't answer her questions. Well, the doctor has another 25 people who research in depth what they have. Like, this is a general practitioner. Like how do you can't specialize in all these things, right? And so we walk away with a bad experience. The person was extremely likable. It's not the point, but Maureen, my wife's knowledge on the topic exceeded at that point in time the knowledge that the doctor has readily available. That knowledge that we had, the buyer versus the seller in our world, like that with a doctor, has flipped. Today, most buyers know their market very well, are very well traveled, have a network of peers that they have access to. So there is no longer this knowledge gap that favors the seller. It now favors the buyer. And you know this, and I know this, that there have been calls. I'm not saying that this is the norm, but it is not uncommon that you sit on a call that the seller doesn't know who I am, doesn't know my company, doesn't even know what problems I'm dealing with. And there are occasions where I go like, I don't even think they know their product right now, right? And that is because in SaaS, if we go back to the 80s and 90s, right, when you're selling, you have to have 10 to 20 years of experience. Now, to lay out the complete, field of all the issues, to give us insight. In the mid-1990s and the mid-2000s, that was still the case. SAP, CRM, and Oracle-style salespeople are in the mid-40s, mid-50s because they need extensive training on product and understanding, and they have built that over history. When you're mid-20s and you enter the sales role, of course you're not going to call on a multi-million-dollar account or anything. Yeah, you're going to be in training for at least 4, 6, 8 years, right? I was put in training for 4 years, But coming 2010, we are now competing with the SAPs and the Oracle, but with Salesforce CRM-like solution that are sold at $4,000. We can no longer afford those 250, 350,000 in those days, 250, 350 today, $500,000 salespeople. We go to mid-20s, mid-30s, first career SDRs, second, third career jobs being AEs. We compress all that in the category 25 to 35. Trust no longer is based on knowledge. The sales pitch is no longer based on a significant value. The sales pitch mid-2010s, 2012, 13, 14, 15 is, folks, I can do what Oracle can do, but you only, instead of having to pay me $1 million, you pay me $4,000 a month, right? And so that group of early stage talent, and it's not the people, right? I'm not saying, oh, it's young people. No, it's not. That talent didn't get an extensive education like I did with 4 years of training. They go like put up or shut up, right? Apologies for saying that, but that's what it is. SDRs, boom, boom, boom. If not, we churn through that. That, how do you say that? That hen or that rooster is now coming to roost, right? Because now what we see, that significant group of people that we become dependent on, right? That is being replaced. And that's what I'm saying. 70% of that group never really cared that much, wasn't that interested in sales, didn't study for it for 12 years. And that group, it will be perfectly fine. They will go to where the next innovation lead is, right? That is a flexible working group. We'll find a new role in where the new world is going, right? Innovation will create jobs, it doesn't cost jobs, but it will optimize the current jobs at hand. That's what we're like, all those points. Growth is back. AI is replacing SDRs, AEs. Knowledge gap has flipped. Do we still need software? Because that's another point. Do we need 20 pieces of software to do one thing, right? Like all that, that's in the midst of where we're at right now. And we're going to be fine, by the way. I just want to make sure it's like everybody realizes, oh my gosh, panic. No, we're going to be fine. Great product will always survive, and great salespeople will always be needed. So like, and whether salespeople are customer success people, effective sellers, or marketers, they are all, you know, like you split the company to you're either creating product or you're selling product.
Yeah, so many great points. So I think to underline something or to highlight something here, you know, you're talking about the buyer experience. This is something, these are the basics that never go out of style, but they're never in fashion. Like it's not fashionable to think about this. It's not hot, but it will always work, right? And it's, most companies, most founders, most sales leaders, they worry about their team or their function or their business. How do we get more success? How do we reach more people? How do we convert more people? They don't worry as much about their customers, right? Like, what do our customers struggle with right now? What are they most worried about? What are they most overwhelmed with? What is most irritating to them? What is most delighting them, right? And like, how do we play into this to serve the customer better, right? To be closer to the customer. That's thinking about the customer and then working backwards to how do we use what is changing in the world to serve that customer better than anybody else. That leads you to very different ideas, outcomes, or decisions than when you go from, we've been doing it this way, it's not working anymore. What tool do we use? What thing do we do to fix our problem, right? Our selfish, sort of internally focused problem.
I'm going to simplify our go-to-market motion, oversimplify it probably, but I'm going to give us a simple view. So in the world, we have transactional sales, we have the SMB style sales, and we have the enterprise sales, right? The enterprise sales, we typically refer to an enterprise or strategic account management roles, like often supported by sales engineers, solutions architect, like that certified kind of like seller's mentality. Let's hold that for a second, and let's assume that in the future, they will be assisted by AI, but not necessarily replaced by AI. Then on the lower end, we also know what's going on because that already happened. You know, like there's no need to involve when we're selling a $5 license. That's going to be product-led growth, right? The product-led growth motion and everything developed up there has gone well. What we see is that middle category. And we now look at that middle category and we go like, hey, we tried that SMB style sales, which as the RAE, we call that for the time being the low touch sales, closing a $20,000 deal on 5 to 10 meetings in online meetings, kind of like world, right? We wanted that to trend towards the enterprise sales. We thought originally, right, the industry, that is going to take over the enterprise world. And typically in the early 2020s, when COVID hit, we said, okay, everything is going to be online and remote selling right now, right? But it has not. That enterprise selling has stayed. What we actually see is that what the role that PLG played. Now, when I said earlier on, is like, hey, we can't grow an exponential output based on a human-based input, aka more people. Therefore, we need to scale the humans exponentially to create that exponential output. Well, PLG proved that to be right, because PLG said, if I remove the people and I replace it with systems, systems do scale exponentially. What we are now seeing in the SDR and AE part, in that middle part, that SMB, that low touch motion, is that it is no longer PLG who's replacing that. It is AI-led growth. So on the lower, simplified, on the low end, we're going to get product-led growth. In the middle, we're going to get AI-led growth. And on the high end, we're going to get human-led growth. Now, of course, it's going to spill over in each other, right? Something may be prompted with PLG, then move into AI-led growth. And then as the team grows and grows and grows, human-led growth may take over. But I'm just creating these three clear swim lanes and say, like, let's think about it in this way, right? Product, AI, and human-led growth. In that role, what you'll see is most SaaS companies are most represented in that middle category. That $24,000 to $50,000 price range fits all in that middle category. And so pick a number, 60, 70% of all SaaS companies, that's what those are. If you take it and apply that to the 1,200 unicorns that are currently going public, intended to go public, we have a slot of about 35 over the next 18 months. We're going to see that is going to be they're going to be duking it out. Who deserves the right for an IPO slot, right? And the other day, I forgot which company, which financial institution reported that there are over 100 companies that are currently filing for IPO in 2026. And, you know, like you have to understand in 2021, the height, we did what, 29 IPOs or something like that, right? And so we're not going to have room for a 100. And so now that doesn't mean that the other, you know, like acts are going to fail. No, they just have to come up and find money, not to get from investment, but to get from their customers. If you cannot get money from funding, or you cannot get the terms that you like from funding, because the terms are going to be horrible. We already noticed with Zuora that get back in, that was a 4x, not a 7x, not a 10x, not a 20x, a 4x. Where we start to see, folks, when you know, like, you got to look at your customers as your growth center, rather, and your funding, rather than your venture capital. If you know, like, because the shots are low right now. That is what lies ahead of us, Steli.
Yeah. Wow. Well, look, I'm sure people are listening to this and going, "Holy moly! Yes, this makes so much sense." I'm both thrilled, scared, and excited. But now let's take two people real quick. Let's take the salesperson. I'm not even gonna say junior, just somebody that is today making their life selling in a SaaS company or in a tech company. And they're listening to this and they go, okay, Jacco, you got me convinced. What the hell do I do now? Like, what is my next step? What is my next action item? How do I prepare for this future? Or how do I become part of it? What do I do?
It's a very simple thing. It's the reason why you are on this podcast and I'm on this podcast. Do what you're most passionate about and become an expert in it. Do only one of the two, won't work. You need both, passionate and expertise. So what do? If you like the vertical you're selling in, right? Like we deal with a company called Snap, S-N-A-P-P-T. These people do a SaaS software to help people who rent out real estate in bulk, aka like apartment complexes. If you're an owner of that, they help you out with that, right? But they're very passionate about that. That, you know, like, stick in that market, know who your market is, know who your customer is, know what they care about, learn about the product, learn about what others do. That, you're going to be fine. You're like, you always have a job. Like in that case, you always will be somebody who wants to sell to that group of customers, and therefore it will work out. Like, I work with a friend of mine called Jeff, and Jeff, I'll skip his last name, was the multi-billion-dollar budget owner at Dish Aquastar, competitor of DirecTV. Over the years, up till like I sold last to him in 2007. We're still friends today, right? Like, this is nearly 20 years later, because I utterly cared about his business and what he was doing. I knew everything about that topic. That is the way how you approach. If you're today's seller, just and over personalize that. Take them out to lunch and so on and so forth, right? That is the modern way of selling. By the way, when I say that middle sector moves to AI, that's a large part. That's not all part. The remaining 30%, because I say 70% of all the activities will move to AI. The 30% becomes hyper-personalized, because in-person meetings, coffees, small dinners with groups, that will actually counterbalance the AI element. A seller will go into a region, and this is another task. I'll give this as a task to a seller. Go into your region, have a meeting. We call it an anchor meeting. Let's say you go to Atlanta, you have an anchor meeting with a customer. You're going to meet Jennifer, who is the head of enablement at that company. Have that meeting with Jennifer, then book 2-3 other meetings with other people at Jennifer's company. Nobody said you can only meet one person at the company. Book 2-3 other meetings with the introduction line. Hey, I'm meeting with Jennifer while I'm in town. I was hoping to meet up with you. You already have a warm lead into Jennifer. So that already shows you already get the pass, right, for the building, so you don't have to return it, right? Expand that. Number 2, then in that afternoon or that night, go to your pavilion membership crew and ask other people in the pavilion region, say like, hey, let's have dinner together, or let's grab together, social event. Next morning, do a workshop. Now start booking other meetings. You may only have a limited travel budget, but that doesn't mean that you cannot fly. That doesn't mean that you need to fly 10 times to a customer back and forth. When you fly one time a month, make that trip worthwhile. Book it full. Running club, whoever is running in the morning, go do something. That's the trip that's the advice that I have for a seller.
Absolutely. I love it. All right. So I'm going to connect this to an advice I gave to an SDR many years ago. And he's become a very successful founder now. And this was the one tip that he attributes to playing a role in this, because it connects so beautifully to what you said. I think it connects to maybe the sort of like what everybody should focus on, like, you know, passion, curiosity, energy, and also, you know, I believe, at least, and it seems you do too, people will want to work and be part of the world and of the economic cycle, right? Like we maybe will play a much more important role and a very different role, and the economic cycle of the world will scale and become much bigger, but we will want to contribute as people. And so it becomes a question of like, how can you uniquely as human contribute in a way that technology might not be able to do, right? And so relationships, creativity, many, many things that you'll be able to become more human than sort of the industrialized technology worker that's like an assembly line, and you just like, you do 1 hour of this task and 2 hours of that task, and project management and a lot of data entry and summarizing. All that might go away, and sort of gives us an opportunity to do more creative, more human, more impactful work. But coming back to that tip, he was an SDR and he was doing a lot of calls, and it was qualifying a lot of founders, because the product that we're selling was to like other startups and other tech founders. And he was saying, I'm doing this for a year, Steli, and I go through so many calls a day, and it's fun, and I learned a bunch of stuff, but I stopped learning. I know how to speak, I know how to qualify, I know to reach these people, and I'm just hitting my quota. And what do I do next? I don't see a path to really grow here. And so it's gotten really boring and really empty for me. And what I told him back then was, well, what is your dream 10 years from now? Like, what are you really interested in doing? He's like, I'd love to do my own startup. I'm like, okay, so you talk all day long with startup founders, right? Do you like some of them? Is some of these conversations interesting? Are they doing interesting stuff? And he's like, yeah, absolutely. Some of these people are really awesome and brilliant. Like, why don't you just identify even just one person a day that you're like, if I was a venture capitalist, this is the person that I would invest in. And actually, maybe also find the one that you think you would invest in, and the one that you'd want to be friends with. So independently of the money, you're like, this person, if I could be friends for life, this is the person I'd want to be friends for life. And you create your own little list of people that you personally invest in to build a relationship with, to get to know, to learn from, to hang out with, have coffee, send them a gift on their birthday. Just build a relationship. You talk to amazing people all day long. All of a sudden, it's not just about qualifying. It's about like building a network, learning beyond just the scope of the task day to day. And that was a game changer for him back then. And it's that mind shift, like seeing that opportunity right in front of you. You're doing this work, go out of that mechanic cycle and see if there's an opportunity here for me to do more than just check off my to-do list or create the outcome that's needed on the day.
So earlier on, I said AI will help us do 3 things. Do you recall what they are?
Bring down the cost, scale up what we do, and then you said quality, improve the quality of what we do.
Guess what you told that gentleman to do, or gentlewoman to do? Which one of those 3 were did you tell him to focus on?
Quality.
You'll see, and obviously like that mindset of quality focus, we have applied, unfortunately, due to the early years, and the books written on this topic was all about volume, write bad emails, get, like, doesn't matter, right? Like all that, and all tricks and all growth hacking and whatnot, right? And all that ended up as we're right where we thought it would be. It failed, right? And now as the market failed in 2022 and 23, many will now apply AI to grow at a lower cost, right? Not growth at any cost, now growth at a lower cost, and applying those same mindset of lower the cost, increase the volume. And they're gonna continue to drive that train right off the edge once again. Those people who focus on quality, like your friend did, this is a story that is known and written many times. Focus on quality, right? And so we're going to see that back. You said, was it? Yeah, like I think that is like a world that we nowadays live in that quality world. The second thing that I point that I want to make, look. And Winning by Design, we nowadays help companies go through that AI journey, right? We analyze their business and we say like, hey, here's the spots where AI will impact you. Here's the top 3, how we recommend that you deploy it. And for that first one, here's how a 90 to 180 day sales cycle should look like, right? And then you can pick the tool who you want to. We certainly have some words of recommendation, but like that's it, right? And then, the thing that helped me realize how controllable this is the moment in time that I come to the realization AI need to be recruited, onboarded, trained, managed, and coached. It needs all of that. The only benefit, or one of the few benefits that AI has besides cost and everything, that knowledge doesn't walk out of the door. Because if I train a seller today and they get better and better, sooner or later they will ask for more stock options, more money, and sooner or later that will hit the barrier that I can no longer afford. Therefore, that person leaves out. So either my scalability goes down because I lose my salesperson, or my sustainability going down because I'm keep increasing his or her salary to a way that I can no longer afford it. And I'm obviously thinking groups down here. Today, that knowledge walks out of the doors and you have to start over again with the next person. AI does not have that. It had a remnant that keeps building on itself. It actually accumulates, whereas in human beings, it generally dissipates over time. So keep thinking that, right? That means that the advice that we have nowadays from most sales leaders and executives and people who are listening to this call is like, look at your area of expertise. Identify which AI tools are having an impact. You don't have to have a complete picture, gosh, because we're going to get another 6,000 logos on a chart slide spread over marketing functions, right? I can already see it. And it's the same logos, by the way. They're just now all are trying to get categorized as AI, right? But just look at and play around with it in the next 30 days. The thing here is, Steli, and that is like, I'll use an analogy from Moneyball or from The Big Short, or pick any one of those movies that is about fundamental principles, first principles changing, because we are right now experiencing a first principle change, right? When the Oakland A's experienced that in the movie Moneyball, right? They had what is called a 0-day exploit. They used it first, and as a result, they benefit from it. Then they didn't invest in it, right? The Red Sox did, and they became 3 times the world champion afterwards, right? We see in Europe the same thing with the nowadays Ineos cycling, what is called today Ineos cycling team. They early on found out a way that gave them a 0-day exploit. We see that in the movie The Big Short. Those investors realized that was going to happen. They put puts on it and they created a financial benefit worthy in the millions of dollars. We are the same thing right now. We are at a first principle change. That means the first movers who get there actually are going to go, not only going to get an advantage, but because the technology is accelerating so fast, they're going to, if they keep up the same pace, that if anybody that follows them and wants to catch up to them, is virtually impossible because they have to double the pace of this incredible pace they're already going. We are watching in front of us a 0-day exploit. Now, let me give you an example of what that means. That means if you're currently are a 500-person email automation company that has engineering and R&D and cost centers and distribution and sales processes, and there's a 25-person company that uses AI to do that, you're going to be competing with the 25-person company. And not only one, you're going to compete with 25 of them right now. And no longer will you be losing to that one company that you've been beating up with each other. You're going to be losing by 100 small companies that are chasing you down right now. And that is because you cannot make the same changes because everybody on your team is AI lazy. They're fatigued. They don't want to hear it. So much technology. This didn't work. Do we have to do it again? Can we not keep it the same? I got children now. I got a mortgage. I got this. I just want to keep it all comfortable. While those younger company goes like, really? Can we just do that in AI right now? Absolutely. And those companies are going to chase down. That's the friction. So on top of that, right? And that knowing where your background lies and how this is going to matter, throwing on top of that, that younger company now says, I can use performance-based pricing. I'm ready. I don't need, first of all, I don't need $50 million any longer because I don't need to build out my GTM team. But I'm now going to put myself pricing and I'm going to have the customer prepay the outputs, right? I'm going to ask for prepayment of like 50,000 meetings or something like that, right? Mm-hmm. And they're now going to compete with that bigger company. And again, 25-fold, right? That's the world that we're entering. And that's the world where I'm seeing is, folks, let's get real about what that is. What are those 1,200 unicorns really unicorns? Or are they just mom and pop shops that were unicorns primarily because of the decade that they were created in? How many of them, as Mark Schuster said, he believes that only 1,000 of them were unicorns. And I have a tendency to, 1,000 of them were no unicorns. They are mom and pop vertical SaaS shops that have a complete right to exist and to sell in the world of $40 to $200 million, right? And it's completely fine. But are they truly valued at like 20x multiples and so on? I think not. I think that we're going to see an ongoing lively world of vertical SaaS, which is going to benefit from AI. And then the last point, and I'll hand it back. What AI is doing, it is democratizing GTM. You no longer need a $50 million round to go buy or rent real estate in the Salesforce Tower and bring on 200 SDRs and 400 AEs to grow. No longer needed, right? Those days are numbered, so to speak.
I love it. So let's finish on that note. A last point that I'll make to wrap us up. There's some people that will listen to this and they will get excited. Many of them might have been excited at the beginning, and then just the little flame, and it's now a raging fire, right? Awesome. That's the right energy to have. Now channel it and take action. But then there's some people that are going to be scared to death at this point of this conversation, right? And somebody once said, and I find it very true personally for sure, that the difference between scared and excited, or anxiety and enthusiasm, emotionally, sensation-wise, it's a very similar feeling in our body, but it's a very different framework. It's just a different way of thinking about it. There's a lot of energy in your body. If you connect that energy with danger, you're now scared. If you connect it with opportunity or possibility, you're now excited, right? So this is the time to, more than anything else, to switch and get excited, right? Take all that energy, take all that uncertainty, use all that and channel it into excitement and forward motion. If this conversation didn't get you excited, then then I don't know what. It definitely got me pumped. So thank you.
Here's what I think I found. Sure. I had the privilege of training alongside a multi-time world champion in triathlons, and dangled in that for quite a while. As you may know, I was capable of doing certain things in triathlon, such as competing at the national level. The point that I found is, like, if you ask any human being, you need to do an Ironman next year, right? People will go like, oh my God, never can do it. But you don't start that journey by doing the race. You start that journey, and the first time you get in the swimming pool, you think, how in the world can I complete 50 laps? I can barely complete 3, right? And then 2 weeks later, you are able to complete 3, and then soon 5, 10, and then there's a few things that takes that scare away. Number one, in Alien, the movie, and Aliens, the moment you see the beast, you're no longer afraid of the beast. This beast is readily accessible on the internet. Go to a website called onemind.com, start chatting in a Chrome browser, start chatting with an AI agent, right? They call it a superhuman. Go to onemind.com, click on it, enter it, start communicating with it. Learn it. Sit back, close the door, and talk to an AI. And what you will learn, there's nothing to be afraid of. Like, if you look at that AI agent, you go like, they are not going to take away your job. They're going to take away a job of the 20 people you compete with who are not doing what you're doing right now. Talk to an AI agent, learn it. Here's what you're going to find. You talk 10 minutes to an AI agent, you're done talking. You got all the info you want and you're ready to move away. You don't talk to an AI agent for 2 hours. Like you don't, it's just not natural, right? So you do it for 10, 15 minutes, you got a lot of information. Number one thing is get that fear away. Number two thing, look at your job and figure out where you can apply AI. And I mean, like, if it's as simple as ChatGPT, text, like proofreading your message, that's a fantastic place to start, right? We're not asking people to become coders, right? We're not asking them to go that. We're asking them to type in a command the same way that typing in a Google search, right? Like, just become familiar with that. For companies, I believe they're going to face a different problem, Steli. And I believe that what they're going to find is that the weakest link on their part of the company that doesn't embrace or has no AI play can take the company down if it's a key function. So anybody, marketing, sales, customer success, operations, product, those are all the key functions. And I can include HR in there, by the way. If you're not using AI in your application, right, you're going to fall behind and you're going to become a weakness in the organization. So to CEOs, learn about it, right? And obviously, like I'll stop here, obviously Winning It by Design does that, right? We now educate and stuff like that, but I'll leave that up to the notes of this to refer to that.
There you go, my man, Jacco. It was an absolute honor, a pleasure, a spiritual Red Bull can, and not the small one, the big one, talking to you. I'm like so pumped. Thank you so much. You have always been a well of information, encouragement, guidance to founders, to tech companies all around the world. You're awesome, sir. And something tells me we'll be back and talk more, hopefully very, very soon. But thank you so much.
To all the listeners out there, thank you very much for listening to Steli and I. I greatly appreciate it. It is a privilege and an absolute treat to serve you with what we are so passionate about. Thank you for being on this.